Once we level out at 1,500 feet, we can raise the manifold pressure to 22 inches and the speed should even out at about 170 knots. The autopilot should be taking us pretty much straight towards Harveyfield on the heading bearing set by the instructor, but as we get closer we can disengage it and use the GPS to guide us straight in. Let's skip forward till we get a bit closer. On the left you can see we're passing Payne Field over there in the distance, which is where we'll land at the end of this check ride. We've got to make a stop at Harveyfield first. Harvey should be coming up ahead of us on the left now.
Make left traffic for runway 14 at Harveyfield. When you have an idea about how you'll enter the downwind, you can descend to a traffic pattern altitude of 1,000 feet. Configure the airplane for landing and enter the downwind leg for right traffic. I want you to make a short field landing on runway 14 and come to a stop on the runway as soon as possible.
Okay, now we can descend to 1,000 feet and enter the traffic pattern. So let's set the manifold pressure to about 15 inches to bring our speed down a bit. Let's use the autopilot to bring us down to 1,000 feet. And lower the gear when the speed drops below 152 knots. We're going to bank left to a heading of about 33 degrees. We're aiming for a point just to the left of that small lake in the distance over there. See the lake coming up now on the right. Just before we reach the lake, bank to the left and make a 180-degree turn. Switch the autopilot off completely for the landing. there's the red light of the airfield, so let's line up for the approach now. We need to lower the flaps completely for the landing. And we just need to skirt around that hill there to the right of us. Just about see now that there's actually two runways at Harvey, 14L, which is a tarmac one on the left, and 14R, which is a grass one on the right. We want the tarmac one on the left. As you can see, it's ridiculously narrow and very short, so you might want to practice taking off and landing here a few times before you take this check ride. We need to kill the throttle just as we cross over that stream and hit the brakes as soon as we touch down. Okay, now if all is well and we've not made any mistakes thus far, she'll tell us to taxi to the end of the runway, turn around and line up for the takeoff.
Okay, now taxi to the end of the runway and make a 180-degree turn. Don't worry if you have to taxi into the grass to make the turn. When you are in position for a departure on runway 32, configure the airplane for normal takeoff. When ready, you are cleared to take off on runway 32.
Well, she's happy so far, so let's taxi around to the far end of the runway and line up for takeoff. Okay, now we're in position. We need to check that our flaps are up and that the cowl flaps are open for takeoff. After the initial takeoff, she's going to ask us to climb to 6,500 feet, but this time she's expecting normal climb power settings of 25 inches manifold pressure, 2,500 RPM, and a steady speed of 120 knots. So again, let's set the autopilot up in advance. We'll set the altitude to 6,500 feet and the vertical speed to 1,000 feet per minute. And again, we won't actually engage it yet, we'll switch it on once we're in the air. Okay, so now full throttle and aim to pull back at around 80 knots. We can raise the gear as soon as we're airborne and pitch the plane at around 15 degrees to maintain a speed of around 105 knots until she next speaks.
You're cleared for a normal climb to 6,500 feet and to turn right to a heading of 140 degrees.
Okay, let's turn the autopilot on now and just let it bank us round to 140 degrees. We need to reduce our manifold pressure to exactly 25 inches and the RPM to 2,500. We need to be climbing at a steady speed of 120 knots, but we can adjust the vertical speed to keep us steady. I'm going to raise it a bit to 1,200 feet per minute. We also need to keep adjusting the manifold pressure to hold it at exactly 25 inches until it won't go any higher.
Let's turn right to a heading of 280 degrees and continue climbing to 6,500 feet.
Again, she'll adjust the heading bug for us, so we can just let the autopilot guide us round to 280 degrees.